Hey there, pen fans. Brian Goulet here of gouletpens.com, and it's episode number 272 of Goulet Q&A, coming here at the end of October. Just celebrated Halloween. Happy All Saints Day, if that's your thing. I'm actually recording this on Wednesday, so I haven't yet had Halloween, but I'm going to talk about it as if I did. Wow, it was amazing! Actually, it's supposed to rain, so we're probably going to be going around with our kids begging for candy in the rain. Should be awesome. Kids are very pumped though, so it's happening no matter what the weather. But anyway, it's also Fountain Pen Day. So I alluded last week to some of the sales and things that we're gonna have going on. So if you are not aware that it's Fountain Pen Day, today, as of publishing this video, November 1st, 2019, you should go to your favorite retailer site, which hopefully is us. But I think there's a number of retailers doing sales and things like that. Don't wanna leave anybody out, but anyway. We're doing a whole ton of different sales. We're gonna have a lot of different things. I think we have something like 400 different pens on sale. So it's a lot. We have some other good deals going on. So go to our site right now, check those things out. I will not exhaust all the details of that, but for sure, there's some cool stuff going on. All right, other things that we've had, the Retro 51 Chapino fountain pen came in. I've actually been carrying this one around. I've got the rollerball version, which I meant to get out ahead of time, but here it is. So I've had the rollerball version, which I really love. I'm a big fan of, shell inlay kind of stuff. To get a shell inlay, typically you got to get like a Maki Yarushi type deal, and you're into the hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. But this one was under $100 in the rollerball version. And it's just around that price, a little bit more for the fountain pen version. Now these are hard to produce, so we don't get the most regular stock of them. But I am just infatuated with it, so I got one for myself. So you're actually going to get to see me unbox my own. I went with a fine nib on my personal one, which is, just like a good all-around nib for me. They come sealed in a tube in case you've never been knowledgeable of a Retro 51. This little unboxing here for you at the beginning. So they always theme their pen tubes with these wraps that are very fitting to the theme of the pen. So I'm very excited to see how this pen, I actually have not seen the fountain pen version of it yet. So I'm going to compare it to the rollerball. So it comes in a tube, it's got a foam insert on the tube, which is kind of cool if you want to use it as like a pen stand on your desk. It's pretty handy as well. I got it wrapped in here. Oh my gosh, this looks good. Oh, look at all that shell. Okay, so I will allow you to take a gander. I don't know if this is technically abalone shell, but I know it's a natural shell. I don't know the exact source or the technique used. I do not believe that it's Yarushi lacquer, because if that was the case, this would be like a $1,000 pen. Look at all that shell in there. So pretty gorgeous, I gotta say. I like this even more in person than I thought I would. I'm very excited. And now I have a nice matchy-matchy to my rollerball, which I'm pretty excited about. Little finial on the top there. It's just a, like a steel-colored, silver-colored finial to go with the rose gold. And then the nib as well. The nib is not rose gold. That's the only thing on this pen that I'm like, oh man. But this does have a branded Retro 51 nib, which is something relatively new they've been doing. So they switched over to Yovo a while ago. And get you a close up there. Boom, Retro 51. So it's got the little 51 in there. So it's got the steel nib, the polished steel, which doesn't quite match, but honestly with the abalone, or the, sorry, I don't technically know if it's abalone, with the natural shell in there, it's not so crazy looking. But that, oh man, that just looks so good. I probably won't even use this pen. I will probably just keep it in the tube and just keep it on my desk and look at it because it looks so good. Anyway, very excited about that. So we have those, extra fine, fine, medium, and stub, I believe. So you can check those out on our site. What else have we got? Some big news, big news this week is we are able to officially announce that Yovo nibs are now going to be coming on Monteverde and Conklin pens. So Yafa, which is the parent company that owns both those brands, has invested heavily into these Yovo nibs. So all the Monteverde and Conklin, they're all branded and all that kind of stuff. They're not just using like stock Yovo nibs, but they have worked with Yovo really over the last year or so. And I've known for a little bit that they're going to do it and had to keep it quiet. So I'm so great to now finally not have to keep that secret. But anyway, we are going to start seeing those coming over now. If you've been kind of scratching your head like, why are they out of so many Conklin and Monteverde pens? That's why. Is because JoWo nibs have been coming, so they've been trying to keep the nibs going, use up what they have, but there's going to be a big changeover. It's starting out, so nibs are kind of coming in waves now at this point. So the only ones that I know for sure are in yet is Conklin steel, the polished steel colored, extra fine, and medium. Now they are going to be expanding to a broad and a 1.1 millimeter stub, which is great because they did not have that before on these. Now Conklin, they are not going to be two-tone nibs, unfortunately. They're going to be just the polished steel, but honestly it looks pretty clean anyway. So it's going to have that Conklin with the crescent and everything. You'll be able to see pictures on our site. We have tested some of them and they write every bit as good as the standard JoWo nibs that we've seen. That's JoWo makes our Goulet nibs, they do Edison nibs, they do Diplomat, so they do a number of different, they do Monograppa, number of very reputable pen companies using JoWo, and now Conklin and Monteverde are joining the ranks. So hopefully we can see a more consistent supply, really good performance on those nibs, so we're very, very excited about this announcement. So we'll be having more of those pens coming out as we go. For sure, I'll talk more about it. Drew and I will do some right now stuff on it, but that is something that has been in the works for quite a bit. They've invested a lot into making that happen. So huge props to them. Yeah, very excited about that. So we'll see that. There's gonna be all kinds of Fountain Pen Day stuff. I won't talk anymore about that because you may have already left and you're on our site right now. But if you happen to be coming back to this video later on down the road, I do have some questions for you that I can answer for you today. All right, let's start out with some pen and writing questions. This is going to start out coming a question from Instagram. I think I'm coming alive on Instagram. Are fountain pen cleaning products really necessary? I don't know if that's the particular tone that you had, but like, really, are they necessary? I think the short answer of it is yes and no. So fountain pens, if you're using, you know, kind of conventional dye-based ink that doesn't have any permanence qualities to it, doesn't have any propensity towards staining or anything like that, you can use those inks if you're cleaning it with regularity. Every 3 to 4 weeks or so, you're refilling the same ink. You're cleaning it out with, you know, lukewarm water, ideally distilled water, you know, but if you have clean tap water, that's okay too, or bottled water works well. These are all good things, and you should be doing that. Where the cleaning products come in is to make your life better, more convenient, to help in cleaning some of the maybe more extreme properties of some of these pen or ink situations. That's where the cleaning products really, really come into play. So the short answer is no, you don't necessarily need it in all situations. It's like any other tool. Do you necessarily need these things for your daily fountain pen use? No, but if you're an avid fountain pen user, you're changing ink colors all the time, you're using shimmering inks or permanent inks, or you know, maybe you're like me, you have a bunch of different pens and you might leave some of them sitting around for a while and they kind of dry out and are really a pain to clean. The cleaning products can make things faster, they can clean things a little better, and just enhance your overall experience, because let's be honest, we don't all get into fountain pens because we love cleaning pens. You know, there can be sort of a, you know, therapy, I guess, to cleaning your pens, or maybe you kind of build it in. It's kind of a mindless activity. You watch a video or listen to a podcast or whatever, and you clean your pens, and it's kind of a ritualistic thing. I get that, but that's not like why you get into pens and you're like, no, I don't really like writing pens. I really just like cleaning them. So I have a bunch of friends and I just clean all their pens. Maybe you're in that situation, but I think you would be the first of anyone I've heard. So it's kind of a necessary evil that we do. So most people, you use the cleaning products because it speeds up that process, so you can clean your pens faster, maybe change your ink colors more often, whatever. Get to the more enjoyable parts of it. Spend less time doing more of the work of the fountain pens, which is the cleaning process. So some of the most helpful tools in that way. Got to plug the bulb syringe. I'm a huge fan of the bulb syringe. Been a huge fan literally ever since I first discovered that this is something that was handy with fountain pens. It's particularly helpful if you are using a cartridge converter pen, because you can take that pen. I will use the Jinhao 51A as an example. because I'm going to be talking about how to clean hooded nibs here later. Oh, I got that one inked. I'm going to use a different pen because I have it inked right now. Jinhao Shark, okay? So it's cartridge converter pen. Nice thing about a bulb syringe is, oh my gosh, throwing parts everywhere. You can fill the whole thing with water. It holds like 50 converters worth of water in here. You just push it right on the back and you flush all that water down through the nib. 1 or 2 flushes with this thing and you're done. So much easier, especially if you're like me and you're cleaning like 10 pens at a time. It can save you minutes, multiple minutes. No, really, it can save you like 20 or 30 minutes in a big cleaning session, just having that bulb syringe and not having to like take the converter and go up and then down and then up and then down. Huge lifesaver, well worth a couple of bucks. Other things that can be really handy, I don't know if you consider silicone grease a cleaning product necessarily. It's more of a maintenance item, but this just it can make your piston seal smoother. It can make your threads operate a little smoother. Big fan of that. I don't know if it's really a cleaning product, but I wanted to plug it a little bit. Ink syringes, these can be used for filling. They can be used for cleaning some. Definitely not a necessary item, but super helpful, especially if you like to fill cartridges and converters and things like that. Goulet grip can be helpful when you are wanting to disassemble a pen. This is particularly if you have shimmer inks or anything where it's like stuff gets into all the nook and crannies. If you need to yank any nibs out or do anything like that, really handy to have an extra little bit of gripping power so that you can fully disassemble your pen, clean it all out. I'm not joking, I have some pens where I will disassemble and clean the whole pen. It takes me 30 seconds to a minute to do that pen, where if I was just flushing and filling and flushing and filling, it might take me, I'm not joking, 10 minutes to do. So it can be a very meaningful thing. Even just to have the ability to take off the nib can be super helpful. The one that I would say you probably don't need so much is the brass sheet. This is only in certain scenarios where you might need it. If you know you have really fibrous paper or your nib is really toothy and it tends to gather up a lot of fiber, or just the flow is not working well in your nib, the brass sheet can be handy because you floss the tines and the floss that slit in between the tines, and that can help just physically just get any gunk out of there. Whereas, you know, if you're trying to do it with just water, you're not gonna really get enough pressure on that point. If there's a clog or something like that in between those tines, that brass sheet's gonna make all the difference in the world. But you totally don't have to have that, okay? That's a really handy tool if you have really just done everything to try to clean it and you're just at that point where you're like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. That's where it can be really handy, but not an entirely necessary thing. So again, these tools are really helpful. And then pen flush too, that's another thing that people ask about. Do you really need pen flush? No, not necessarily, but it can just speed up the cleaning process faster. Where it is really handy is when you have really old, dried, crusty ink inside the pen. It's been left there for a while and you gotta break that down. The pen flush really helps to expedite that process. Without it, you can use water. You can even use water with a little dish soap. Just soak it and just leave it sitting in there for a while. Let the water do the work. But again, you might have to soak a pen for 3 days, whereas pen flush, you could soak it for an hour or two, and then, or just even mechanically clean it, you know, use a toothbrush. If you have shimmer ink or something, use a toothbrush with a little bit of pen flush and scrub it, and it's like, cleans that stuff out pretty much immediately. And then you can move on with your life. So these things are all just, you know, you experiment with them, you try them. It's a kind of thing that if you're really into fountain pens, you're using them actively, and you want to change colors a lot, and you find that you're spending a lot of time cleaning, it's definitely worth investing in some cleaning products because it's going to save you time elsewhere. And time is money, right? So it's totally up to you. They're just tools that will help you do a job better and faster if it will make your pen life better. All right, some troubleshooting stuff going right off the cleaning thing, right? How do you clean? This is from VJokerFR on Instagram. How do you clean a hooded nib pen? Right, so I have a couple of hooded nibs here to show you what is going on. So what is a hooded nib first? Let me explain. I'm gonna take a pen like the Jinhao 51A, which is a Parker 51 reboot, if you will, inspired by. Take this pen apart from, say, a more conventional nib like a Pilot Custom 823. Very different price points, but still shows really well. The Pilot, you're gonna have a big nib with an exposed feed and all this kind of stuff. You're really kind of going to see what's going on. The Jinhao is hooded, so the nice thing about a hooded nib, a couple of features, if you tend to grip your pen really closely to the nib, like you really like to hold it down on there, you can really get down on there and not get ink on your fingers. Whereas something like this, if you grip really closely, you can end up touching the feed or touching the nib with your fingers and get ink all over them. Another nice benefit is they tend to dry out, maybe a little less, just because the ink is really like all up and around the nib, and it's just that tiny little bit that's exposed, as opposed to, you know, you've got just all kinds of air exposure here with a more open nib. Those are some of the main benefits of it. And then, of course, stylistically and all these types of things. The challenge is when you have more stuff captured in here, how do you really clean that out well? It's like you can't really get a toothbrush in there if you're trying to scrub it, and you can't really, you know, flush it out maybe so easily. These hooded nibs, too, sometimes will even have a different filler hole than where the ink will come out when you're writing. Thing is specifically about like a Lamy 2000, right? So the Lamy 2000 is a hooded nib. And the filler hole is this little hole right here. So that's actually where the ink draws up into the pen. So when you are cleaning and flushing the pen, most of the water is actually coming out, going in and coming out of that hole, not necessarily where the ink would be coming out when you're writing with it. So it can be a little bit cumbersome to clean out, perhaps, if you have a particularly stubborn ink, or if it's really dried up in there. They can be a little more work. Some hooded nibs you can disassemble. For example, the Lamy 2000. Well, sorry, before I get to disassembly, because that's going deep into it. So when you're cleaning a hooded nib fountain pen, it's really no different than any other fountain pen. It's going to have its filling mechanism, whatever it might be. The Shark pen, the 51A, these are cartridge converter pens. So you can use a cartridge or converter to flush it. And these ones do not have separate filler holes, right? Like the Lamy 2000 does. These ones, you can actually remove the converter, use your bulb syringe, flush it all out over and over and over to your heart's content, and that is going to get it clean. That's really going to do a pretty darn good job. The only time you might run into some trouble is if you have something really stubborn, really crusted up in there. You might need a little more work to get there. But that will pretty much most of the time do the trick. If you don't have a bulb syringe or don't want to invest in anything additional beyond the pen, you can just use the converter and just flush and fill and flush and fill and flush and fill with clean water, and eventually it'll get you there. So that will work for both of these pens. The Lamy 2000, you can do that too, but the Lamy 2000, well, sorry, the flush and fill part you can do. You can't really do the bulb syringe with this pen because it's a piston filler. So the piston mechanism is built into this pen, so you can flush and fill over and over again here. But the problem is it's a piston filler. If you've had it a while and the grease is not maybe quite as greasy as it, the piston's not quite as greasy as it once was, flushing and filling over and over again can get very tedious. So me personally, when I'm cleaning the Lamy 2000, I almost always disassemble the pen. I'm not changing colors all the time in this pen. Personally, when I use it, I keep one inked up with Noodler's Black by my nightstand, and I basically exclusively have Noodler's Black in that because that's my like journaling pen that I keep on my nightstand. And so that one, I'm doing a light cleaning to get the stuff out of there, and then I'm putting Noodler's Black right back in it. So I'm never doing a heavy cleaning. I'll do a light cleaning once a month or so, and then just put the ink right back in there. But if you're changing colors all the time, you may want to go a little deeper. I have a video on how to remove the nib of this pen, a more detailed one. I'll show you in principle here just very briefly, but go ahead and do Lamy 2000 nib disassembly with Goulet pens, and you'll see that video. But basically, you know, it's a hooded nib. And you can unscrew it here right at the edge of the grip section. Now there is this little ring on here that has these wings on it. That's what holds the cap onto the body of the pen. Do not lose that ring. That would be bummer town if you were to lose that because you wouldn't be able to cap your pen anymore. In fact, I don't know if I've ever actually put it back on without the wings to see what happens. There you go. So it's got like some of these pressure bars in here. It'll sort of hold it on. Actually, that does a better job than I would have thought. But it's not very tight on there, and it's definitely going to, like, if you hit it on anything, you certainly wouldn't want to like clip it onto anything because that body's not going to stay on there much. It really needs those wings to hang onto it. Anyway, so when you are cleaning that pen, make sure not to lose that ring. It's okay if you, what I actually do is I take it off and I put it like in a cup or a safe place so I don't like lose it down my sink or something. So I'll take that off. Not grabbing the tip of the nib, but just kind of like using my fingernail to push the end of the feed I'll then kind of push it through, and then you can remove. There's a O-ring back here. There's a couple things going on, but you can remove the whole nib and feed. I rinse this part out with a little bit of water coming down from the faucet. And then I'll usually rinse this under a faucet too, and that'll mostly get it. Or maybe I'll throw this in a cup of water and just let it soak for a bit. Scrub it out with a toothbrush if I have something really gross in there. But that'll mostly do it. I mean, it's not a complicated pen to completely take apart. You do have to be careful about how you put the nib back in there. You have to be very specific because it has to go in this proper orientation. So if you look at the end of that nib, that pen, you see it's like kind of a half moon shape. That nib has to go in there to curve to that. So if you put it in wrong, you can do some damage to the nib. So I don't think Lamy like really technically kind of espouses people doing this on the regular basis, but I am here to say that if you do it at your own risk, it can be something that can benefit your pen experience. However, you didn't hear that from me. Well, technically you did. I can't lie. It's on video on the internet forever. But there you go. So super handy trick for that specific pen. The other ones I have are a little more complicated because I haven't messed around too much with the 51A. I was actually just talking with Brian Kay and our customer service team to be able to learn more about how to do this. He happened to be like messing around with his Shark pen, and he was like, yeah, don't ever try to disassemble this one because it's like, I guess the housing's glued on here. He like cracked the glue and now it's like leaking and stuff like that. And I was like, good to know, because I've like casually tried to take it apart before and just hadn't really gone nuts into it. And he's like, yeah, I basically broke my pen trying to do it. And I was like, I can use that in Q&A today. Like literally as I was walking to come and shoot Q&A, he was like, hey, let me show you this. So there you go. Don't know about the 51A. I'm gonna have to mess around with that one some more, but I wouldn't be shocked if it was similar to the Shark pen because it's a more affordable pen made by the same company, same kind of deal. But there's plenty of other hooded nibs out there. A lot of vintage pens are hooded nibs, Parker 51s and things like that. There's probably good tutorials out there about how to disassemble Parker 51. I am not an expert at doing that. I've never taken apart my own 51s, but there's other hooded nibs and things like that. I think it's a general principle. You clean your pen just like you normally would. If you need to get deeper into it, really disassembling it is going to be the best way to go. If you don't want to do that, just soak it, and then use something like a pen flush, and then that's about as good as you're going to get. Cool. All right, Stefan S from Facebook has another troubleshooting one. I often see people talk about ink drying out in their pens. I've never had this issue, even after months of shimmer ink in a TWSBI Eco. What makes some people experience that often and someone like me never experience it all, even with bad pen habits? Stefan, I think that you have more or less stumbled upon like a winning lottery of a forgiving pen. I know this myself firsthand because the very first TWSBI Eco that I ever had, I inked up with Emerald of Chavor, Jeroboam, so it's a shimmering ink, and I left it in there for 8 months. I used the pen off and on, but largely the pen was just kind of sitting there. I had a lot of pens at the time, and it almost was like, you know what, that shimmering, I really want to see what happens when you leave a shimmering ink in a pen for so long. So I didn't clean it or I didn't refill it or anything for 8 months. I think it was 8, it might have been longer. It was at least 8 months. Lo and behold, I eventually just ended up dumping the ink and cleaning it because I was like, it's not drying out. Like, it just is not drying out. That is a really good thing for something like a TWSBI pen. This is common with a lot of TWSBIs, the Eco really in particular. I've experienced this. I've really never had a TWSBI Eco dry out. It's a particularly great pen for not drying out. And a lot of this has to do with the way that the insert in the cap seals to the pen and how much moisture is able to evaporate out of the ink. So pens that have that insert really do a great job of sealing that ink in there. Now, do all fountain pens need to go like 8 months without drying out? No. So a lot of pen companies may not have that in there. Maybe it's because of design reasons of the pen. The insert just doesn't quite work in the cap. Maybe the materials that are in there. There could be a variety of reasons, but I know that TWSBI pens have that, and it's a particularly strong point they have. Lots of other pens have it too. I'm thinking specifically about some of the pilots, like the Custom 823, the Custom 74s. They all have those inserts. Platinum has a particularly strong system for sealing the nib called their slip and seal, which they have on their Procyon. They have that on their 3776 Centuries. The newer ones, really the new ones as of maybe 6 years ago or so, they developed the slip and seal system that is particularly good at that. Lots of other pens are good sealers as well, but if you can find those inserts, you are golden. Other pens, maybe not so much. I'm thinking specifically about Noodler's Flex pens as an example. They're known to dry out much faster than most other pens. So the pen design itself is a huge factor. Other things, the ink itself. You could have a shimmering ink and it might be more likely to have maybe flow issues if it starts to dry out, and because there's a particulate in those inks. Maybe certain pens is not as forgiving. That could be a factor, or other pens that don't even have a physical particulate in it, like shimmering inks. You might have just an ink that's really prone to drying out or caking up or something. There could be a really, really high degree of saturation in that ink, and it's just prone to that. And then you could be into, having it dry out a little bit more. I think the design of the pen has a lot to do with it, of how much water will evaporate out of the ink, and then you're into some flow things. And also I think your environment has a lot to do with it too. Maybe not as much as just the pen design in general. If you have a pen cap that doesn't seal quite as well, then it's going to dry out quicker just in general. But the relative humidity around your local environment will have something to do with how quickly, not only will the pen dry out, but how quickly the ink will dry on paper too, actually, because it all has to do with evaporation, with the water evaporating. So you are going to be into maybe more drying out issues if you live in a very dry, very arid environment, as opposed to a very wet, very humid environment. And that could vary depending on where you are. It could vary on time of year. It could vary specifically like in your locale. If you live, high up on a hill, it might be much drier than if you live down by the creek, right? Because your humidity is going to be higher where there's more water. So you're going to be into some of that stuff. So I think it's definitely your mileage may vary kind of scenario. There's so many different factors between the pen design, the type of ink, the personal habits of you using the pen, the relative humidity and stuff that you are. Going back to the Noodler's ones, because those are flex pens, they have ebonite feeds. They are wide open gushing feeds to be able to keep up with those flex nibs. They tend to dry out. They tend to leak in the cap more, just as a natural consequence of the open flow that those feeds have. So those pens will dry out more than something like a TWSBI, where it's meant to contain the flow a little bit better. So all of these things just kind of mixed together go into a varied experience across a lot of different people with pens drying or not drying and so on. And that's part frustrating because some people have, if you don't have all the context, you can be like, why are my pens drying out? And somebody, they read your comment, Stefan, and they're like, that's insane. I can't even, months of shimmer ink in my pen, I can't even go a week. Some people have that experience because of a multitude of factors, but it's going to vary for everybody. So at least now you have a little bit more context and maybe why some of that could be happening, and a little more explanation. All right, I got a bunch of business questions this week. Bunch of them. Will Monty 2000 on Instagram says, what do you think will be the best-selling pen of 2019? So this is interesting because we're not at the end of 2019 yet. We're actually coming into the busiest time of year, being the holiday season, with Fountain Pen Day here, and then of course we'll have the whole Black Friday month or whatever. I mean, I'm already getting solicitations coming into November from places like Walmart and Target and Home Depot and all that for, it's not even Black Friday. It's not even Black Friday week anymore. Now it's like Black Friday month. It's crazy. But anyway, I digress. Best-selling pen of 2019. It's yet to be seen whether something that's forthcoming is going to be the best-selling pen of 2019. So I can't fully reflect on what this might be since we're not at the end of the year yet. But at least we're at the end of October, and that's something. We're 10/12ths through the year, right? I didn't know exactly how to interpret this question because it's like, is this the best-selling pen in the world amongst all pens? Because that's probably something like a Pilot G2 or a Bic Crystal or something like that. I imagine that's not what you're asking me because I have little perspective on all the pens in the world. I think, is it just maybe fountain pens? Is it just things that, we sell at Goulet? That's certainly the best perspective I have. So I'm going to narrow the question a little bit to things that I really can speak on intelligently, which is stuff that we carry at Goulet. The brands we carry, the things that we've launched, and that type of stuff. It's possible that we could have just completely missed the boat on the best-selling thing out there in the world, and we're just ignorant to it. But if I'm ignorant to it, then I can't speak on it anyway. So aside from that, do I go by volume, like what the most pens that are out there, or the highest value, like what the most dollars that have been spent on a given pen? Because obviously when you're looking at some pens that are into the hundreds or thousands of dollars, you got to sell a lot of Jinhao Shark pens or Platinum Preppies or even TWSBIs or Lamy Safaris to make up for, something like Homo sapiens and, some of these other things. So I'm going to have to kind of speak in a little bit of generalities, just like what are kind of in total. So like, I can't even break, and then it's like, is it by specific color? Because there's some models like a Lamy 2000 where there really aren't colors, so that one just sells a lot of its own. But then something like a Pilot Vanishing Point, it's like, do I consider like just the black matte Vanishing Point versus all the colors of Vanishing Point? So anyway, the question is very vague in terms of how much I really could break it down, but I thought I would at least speak on a couple of different things and give you some kind of value to this question. So for me, I'm going to give you some perspective. And some of the top contenders, I think, are just going to be kind of a swirled up mishmash of these various factors that I'll present to you today. And then you can just kind of take that for what it's worth. I'll say just kind of a blanket statement in general. Things that tend to do maybe a little better are the newer, hotter, more limited, more exciting, the seasonals, the limited editions, these types of things. If you have a regular edition pen that's been selling for 10 or 20 years, that's well known and loved, and then that version of a pen comes out in an exciting new color, there's a good chance that color in that given year is going to be the best selling thing. So you probably wouldn't be shocked to hear, like, for example, something like the TWSBI Eco, like the purple TWSBI Eco has been really popular. This one has not been around that long, but it's been pretty dang popular. So, is this one the best selling? Yeah, I don't know, but it's been a very popular pen, so I thought I would give it a mention at least. Are we selling more of these than the rest of the Ecos combined, or just the Eco in general is an extremely popular pen, both in volume and in dollars, because it's in kind of that nice sweet spot where it's, kind of falls into both of those camps. But the Eco is definitely an honorable mention. I think the purple in particular is a very strong color for this year. Other things that have been very popular, Lamy is always up there. Thinking about the special edition colors that have been coming out, the All-Star is a strong pen, the Safari is a strong pen. They have been for a long time. And pretty much unless they completely bomb on the color, they're going to be kind of the most popular version of the colors of Safari, for example. It's pretty rare that some regular color that's been out for 10 years or more is going to be more popular during the year that a special edition launches. That's a little different because we had 3 special edition Safaris this year, and you had the Bronze All-Star, we also had the Maran Luxe. So however you want to split all those out, but I would say just in general, the seasonals, the special editions that come out in kind of the staple, really popular pens are going to be kind of some of the best sellers of whatever given year. Vanishing Point is very much in the same way, very popular pen. The black matte Vanishing Point is always up there. It's just such a sleek pen, very popular for sure. But we also had a really strong color this year in the limited edition. So the Tropical Turquoise, really good color. We do not have them anymore. They sold out after a couple days and then they were gone. So if we had had more, definitely would have been a better seller. The matte black is always a good seller. So both of these kind of get an honorable mention, but just the Vanishing Point in general, extremely popular pen. The Diplomat Magnum has been strong. We launched these last year, but it's still been really strong. We were fortunate enough to get an exclusive on this prismatic purple, which continues to be a strong color. So we are continuing to offer this as, oh my gosh, lost the cap. We're continuing to offer this as a Goulet exclusive. We were able to lock that in because we made a commitment, a financial commitment on getting more of these, so we will keep that going, which is pretty cool because the Magnum has been a really great pen. Come on very strong, like really pleased with how they've done. The prismatic purple has been the standout among those colors, at least for us, since we have it. The Pilot Custom 823-2 has really gained in popularity the last few years. The smoke color came out, and the smoke and the amber are like neck and neck. Smoke tends to lead out a little bit on the amber, actually. It has for this year, but it's a newer color, so I imagine more people are getting that to kind of round out their collections and things. So 823 also up there. We're not selling as many 823s as something like a, $20 Magnum or $30 Eco. But, obviously this is almost 3 times the price of an Eco, so you have to sell, 10 times the price. So you have to, if you want to talk volume, you have to sell 10 times as many of these to equal the same, amount of financial commitment that have been made out there in the community to those pens. So yeah, that's it. The Visconti Homo sapiens continues to be a strong seller, the Bronze Age in particular. Very solid. The Lamy 2000 as well. Always a very solid pen. They did come out with the blue, the Bauhaus version. They were super limited. I think had they done those more in mass and then lowered the price closer to the regular ones, I think those would have been the pen of 2019. But they did that as a special thing to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Bauhaus kind of movement. So they kept it as a limited thing. A lot of the pens stayed in Germany, in Europe. So we did not see many of them here, but I think it's worth a mention on that one too. So, again, nothing like hugely shocking if you've been keeping up on things, generally the things that people are talking about a lot, getting excited about, posting a lot about on Instagram and various places, Goulet Nation, all that. There's a good chance that you're not going to be shocked by any of these. But there you go. I think just in general, the things that are good, reliable pens that are talked about a lot that come out with exciting new colors, especially if they're really strong colors, are pretty much always going to be tops. All right, Seth C on Facebook asked, what are some products that you had mixed feelings about, took a flyer on, and it ended up selling like crazy? This is a really interesting question because this honestly can go both ways. We have some things that we're really excited about, you as the community get really excited about. There's a lot of people that sign up for our email notification list. We're all amped up, ready to go. We launched the product, and then it's like crickets, or a few sell, and it's like a total deflated balloon. And we're just like, what the heck? Where did all the excitement go about this stuff? It's so contextual. There's so many different things. It's a total guessing game sometimes. I mean, some things we know are going to be good sellers, and we get a pretty good instinct. Some things fall completely flat. On the flip side, some things really surprise us about how well they do, and it's really shocking that they really take off. And that's what you're asking about here, and those are kind of fun to get into a little bit. The thing that I will say is kind of just a blanket statement getting into this kind of stuff. We'll never carry anything. I mean, literally part of our mission statement is, exemplary service and comprehensive education, exemplary service, and products we believe in. So there's never anything where we're like, this is going to tank, this is a terrible product, and then it sells, and we're like, oh, well, I know it's garbage, but it's selling well, so we're going to carry it anyway. Like, that's really not how we roll here at Goulet. We are very picky, really, in the grand scheme of things. And so we will try to vet things. Sometimes we can be wrong. Sometimes there can be quality issues. We'll always give the benefit of the doubt to a manufacturer. If they have some kind of quality issue, we'll give that feedback. We'll work with them, and kind of do that stuff. But we'll never carry anything that we're just like, oh, this thing's going to bomb. Yeah, but let's carry it anyway. There's always a little bit of a sense of, okay, I think this is gonna do well enough, at least for us to warrant the work and get some excitement in the community. So it has to at least meet that bar. So I can't be like completely swinging the pendulum 100% because we always have some degree of realistic optimism towards a pen. It's much more often for us that something we're really excited about and then it disappoints or falls flat or something like that. Or, you know, we get really excited about it, it arrives, it's a different color than what we thought, or it has some different thing, or it has some major flaw in its design that we weren't aware of from the prototype and so on. That's more the surprises that we're used to. But we have a few. We have a few that we were like, okay, we're kind of on the fence about this one. Let's try it, see how it does. And if it really picks up, great, it'll be a pleasant surprise. You know, we'll have that sometimes, especially with some of the more maybe controversial pens. You know, one that for sure falls into that category is the Stipula Ventidu Tocopherro. So this is one pen, you know, it's a pretty solid pen. We've had some hit or miss with some certain Stipula products sometimes. I'm not trying to be blind to the fact that not everything Stipula we've ever carried has been a home run. So we do have to consider that because they have some kind of out there design. Sometimes things really fall flat. So we got to be thoughtful about that. This was one, this specific one, the Tocopherro here with the orange. This was the first one. It was a new style to us. The Ventidu is a model that's been out before, but we never carried it, and it was in a resin before. It was never metal like this. So it was like, okay, like the price point was pretty okay. It's got the piston filler, and like it's kind of a heavy pen. Like it's smaller, but it's heavier, and we're just kind of like, you know, some of us, and we have a whole team that really kind of debate this. Rachel is ultimately the decision maker about like new things like this that we would carry. So Rachel was really like, guys, I do not think this pen's going to do well. I really don't like this. And some of us in the room, I was like, okay, the orange is like, it's not my thing, but like, I can definitely see where there'd be some interest. Other people were like, this pen is awesome. So there was a big debate on our team, and it was like, all right, we'll try it. And it did surprisingly well. Surprisingly well. We were really kind of blown away with how they sold. In fact, it wasn't like the full shipment arrived. It was like, okay, a few of them arrived, and we were kind of given the opportunity to, you know, either pick it up or not. And this happens various times with different manufacturers and stuff. It's like, okay, we got some, it's in process, you know, there's a batch of them that's ready, and then it kind of comes in, you know, as things are kind of in final stages of production, because they're working on a bunch of different projects at a time. It's not like the whole factory is making one pen at a time. It's done, it all ships, and then they start making another whole pen. There's all kinds of projects going on at various times. They may have done something, and then all of a sudden, you know, one of the machines that's doing one part of it breaks, and they've got half the shipment, but they don't want to delay it, and so on. So things like come in batches on a pretty regular basis across all manufacturers. And that's what happened with Stipula with this one. So it was kind of like, all right, we have some of the pens. So we were like, okay, we'll do a limited launch. And you know, we had kind of like a timed launch opportunity. We sold out very quickly, and it was like, okay, we'll take more. And they had another like kind of small batch, like, well, we'll take them all because we got a bunch of people that are interested. They already know we're getting them. I think we ended up selling most of these kind of de facto. We didn't really have an exclusive per se. I think some of them went to maybe Europe or somewhere else. Maybe some other retailers, but I think we ended up buying most of them just because they were coming in kind of dribs and drabs, and they were popular enough, and we were like, well, dang, that really surprised us, because if you had said out the gate that we were going to buy 351 of these pens, we didn't ultimately buy all 351. It was close though. But if you had said like, this new pen, completely new pen, do you want to buy all 351? For sure, Rachel would have been like, nope, no way. We're not committing that much on a speculative thing like that. And there you go. So then we did, because it was so popular, we went and did the blue as well. The blue, little less popular than the orange because it was not the original and so on, but still pretty well. And, you know, they had more opportunities to do more. So then we did an exclusive on the rainbow, which is a rainbow PVD, and it's pretty cool with the rose gold trim. Some of this was like, all right, the rose gold nib, we were like, all right, at this point, this is the third exclusive of this that we've carried. The rainbow PVD is really cool. You know, we love carrying rainbow products here whenever we can. So we're like, all right, we'll do that one. You know, if it sells out as quickly as the other, we don't even care. It's just cool. We just want to have it. And then we did another one. And this one, again, has really surprised us. So we did one. This was an opportunity when Rachel and I went there. I talked about this a little bit last week, I think. But we went there and they were like, hey, what if we do the Venti do, not technically a Tocopherro because this won't be metal, but what if we do one out of resin again? We have this one material. We had looked at all these materials when we went to Italy last year and toured their factory. And so we kind of picked out the rainbow PVD there, we picked out the carbon Florentia, you know, and we picked out this. And it was purely conceptual, literally never even saw a prototype of this one. We were just going on faith because we really trust them as a manufacturer and Yafa as our distributor. So this is the Tocopherro Gold Touch. Sorry, Venti do Gold Touch, technically not Tocopherro, but it's the same body, same model. It's much lighter because it's resin. We affectionately call it the Goldschlager pen. I've actually got it inked up right now with Diamine Golden Sands. Very appropriate ink for what it is. It's a shimmering gold ink. It's been surprisingly well received, surprisingly popular. And typically, gold pens don't really do that well for us. And so we were like, this is such a deviation from the other, Tocopherro style Venti Dos that we've had. We were like, all right, this material is really unique and cool, and maybe it'll take us 2 years to sell all these. I don't know, but what the heck, we'll try it and we'll just go for just to have it, and it's been received really well. A lot of y'all are loving it very much, and we're thrilled to see that. So 300 of these, not 351 like the others, but this is one that's I don't think it's going to be around for 2 years. I think this one's probably going to be around for maybe 4 to 6 months, maybe, and we'll see how that goes. But this one's another exclusive of ours. So Tocopherro, Venti Do in general, has definitely been one that has surprised us. Another one that has surprised us that was a bit controversial in the beginning, and I'm hesitant to even bring it up because I don't want to stir up the controversy again, is the Monteverde Monza. So the Monteverde Monza, it is similar to a particular Jinhao. It is a different pen from what I understand. The Monteverde's nibs are different for sure. They've tweaked some things, and they are doing them in the Monza 3 sets now, I believe exclusively. So that's helped to really differentiate it. But in the beginning, it was like, oh boy, that was all anyone was talking about, was like, it's just a repackaged Jinhao. Largely, I think that sentiment has been understood, okay, there's definitely similarities, but they're different enough where we don't need to speculate conspiracy theories here. But that said, it has been a fairly popular pen, more well received, I think, than I probably expected even that it was. So they've done a bunch of different colors, different nib combinations and things. Monteverde's done some things to try to make this really interesting. Would it be better if they'd had a completely unique design that would not have had that controversy in the beginning, for sure. But still, I think the pen kind of stands on its own a little bit now, and they're going to continue to evolve it because it has been generally well received, and it's a really affordable pen too. So that's been nice to see. So that one falls into that camp. Another fun one that I just we love to talk about with Rachel is the Jinhao Dragon. So this was the original Dragon that we had, and then we also have the gold version, which if the original one wasn't jumping the shark enough, for sure the gold one is. It's a huge, heavy pen. It's very textured, very three-dimensional. It is not a subtle pen by any means. And that's what I love about it, So I think, not to stereotype, but I think Rachel and maybe some of our other more effeminate leaning individuals were kind of like, this pen's a bit much, but I probably know someone that I could give that pen to who would love it. And most of our lesser effeminate individuals were like, this is the coolest pen I've ever seen. So again, very heavily themed, very, kind of, it's unignorable that it's a dragon. Specifically if you're into anybody using Dungeons & Dragons, any of that heavy gaming kind of stuff. It's a really cool pen. So that one has not been blowing it out the water in terms of its popularity. For sure it was popular right out the gate just because nobody had seen anything like it. And it's really pretty affordable for what it is. It's still chugging along there, but it's not how many of these things are you going to carry around with you every day? So I think a lot of people that wanted these have these, but who knows? It's $30 for this thing. So what are you going to get for that, elsewhere with that, especially with that type of thing? So it's super specific, so it's not universally popular, but I think we were surprised even at just how popular that particular pen ended up being. And then the last one that I have is a Diplomat Magnum. Very popular pen. It's a resin pen. It's a little bit thinner, definitely more in that starter pen range. The surprising thing about this one, this pen's been around for 40 years. I had to even like verify. I'm like, are you kidding me? Because you know, Jaffa's a distributor for Diplomat. Diplomat's company has been around for a long time, and it was like no one had ever heard of this pen. Maybe as few people, but I had never heard about this pen before Jaffa took over the distribution last year and said, hey, there's this pen that's like a hidden gem. You guys should definitely like lean hard into this because we think this would fall right. And we were like, I don't know, like wouldn't we have heard about it at this point? But we got it in our hands and we wrote with the nib and we were like, this nib's kind of soft and a little flexible. Like, what the heck nib is this? And Jovo makes all their nibs. So we were like, well, we know Jovo nibs are good. We tested and wrote with them. We were like, dang. And then they started to come out with some of the colors and we were like, these colors are banging. Like, okay, we can get into this. And lo and behold, like the Magnum has become really kind of a staple starter pen. I think kind of, you know, not to the same degree, but a little bit rivaling. Maybe like the Pilot Metropolitan and the Lamy Safari, like the Diplomat Magnum gets thrown in there with that in a relatively short time frame. Like we've only had the pen for about a year. So I think there's more to be seen from the Magnum, especially knowing Matthias with Diplomat, you know, just had his interview that we posted. You know, seeing the forward thinking now the Diplomat has, we're kind of like, all right, we can lean a little harder into the Magnum. So that was very unexpected. You know, something like the Arrow, you know, the Arrow we knew was going to be a winner with Diplomat because it's a great pen. We really love it here. We love the feel of it. It's got that cap is like, oh, still, it's one of the best capping pens I've ever used. So satisfying. And the Magnum is clearly it's a different pen. It's like a tenth the price. But it's a really solid starter pen, so we're very excited to be involved with Diplomat and that Magnum. So there you go. Those are just a few. I could go on and on, but those are some of the ones that really were top of mind for me, the ones that surprised us the most for the better. All right, H4NKW. I don't know how that's supposed to be. If that's some kind of leet speak, I don't know what it is. Anyway, but you were on Instagram and you posted this question. What's agility and how do you measure or manage it? If it's really not just a buzzword, is GP agile? So Goulet pens. So agile it's kind of a buzzword. If you're, you know, sort of like lean or Six Sigma, you know, agile is I'll call it a methodology. Really, it's something I'm not super well studied on this, so I had to do a little research just so I even know what the heck I'm saying. But I think in general, it's a term of like, you know, if you think about like being flexible or changing, you know, agile is kind of like a proactive term for, you know, willing to make changes and stuff like that in general. You know, just like you have all the buzzwords of synergy and, you know, these types of things. Agile, I think, can maybe fall into some of that, but it's a relatively newer kind of term for a method of maybe productivity or organization or team dynamics, I guess. Specifically, I think it comes out of the software development world. And so it's not something that we are super well studied on here because we don't quite fall into that camp. You know, certain e-commerce companies are very, very development driven. We are not as much. We're a little more high touch, a little old school, being that we have physical products with physical goods and it's fountain pens, you know, but it's a methodology that is worth at least acknowledging. So I looked and I guess sort of the four like tenets, I guess, of agile environments is that individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. So again, I think it just has to do with, rather than being very structured, being very kind of traditional corporate and having set procedures for everything and, you know, you guard yourself with contracts and all that. I think it's more just like, okay, let's maybe work on smaller teams, focus more on collaboration, build, you know, rough prototypes, see what works, what fails, test, iterate, improve, these types of things. I think that in general kind of speaks to, an agile work environment. I've got some awareness of it because my sister and her husband actually run their own company doing software development. So they're called Corgi Bytes, little plug for them. But they basically rebuild old code. So if your code needs to be reworked, revamped, you're not just starting from scratch, but you got to fix stuff. It's not a place that a lot of developers like to be, but they really lean hard into that because they like to do that. So they are very familiar with kind of like software development working techniques, and I think they're a little more into that, but I haven't talked to them like super in depth about it. Contextualizing that a little bit for Goulet pens, I think I like the general idea of just collaborating, work as a team is one of our core values here. Be flexible is one of our core values. So certainly some of what's being talked about in the agile, software development world really kind of fits up with what we do. Focusing on people over tools definitely is how we operate. Obviously we balance out being efficient and having smooth operations and things like that. But we are definitely a little more to lean into, okay, let's focus on, rather than putting all these safeguards in place and running everything very rigid and structured, let's maybe loosen it up a little bit, give the benefit of the doubt to the customer, give the benefit of the doubt to our team, let them just kind of run with it, see what happens, and then we'll look back and evaluate and kind of see how it did. Giving lots of room for interaction and maybe ideation and things like that, testing, iterate, try, test, fail, learn, try, test, fail, learn, kind of that thing. So I don't know if we would be considered like an agile company. I don't think that you really can be considered like a particular methodology unless you've really studied it and adopted it and work towards it. But I think there's certainly echoes or maybe or elements of it that are common throughout that seems to align to the general idea. So without really deeply knowing all the aspects of agile, I would say that in general we tend to maybe lean a little more towards that mode of operation. Cool. All right, last question I have for this week. This is from Brad the Bear 1 on Instagram. What's your favorite reaction that you've gotten from a non-fountain pen user? I have a couple of my favorite reactions. Most of the time it's pretty typical. I've never had anything like truly dramatic, that's really gonna surprise you here. One was a particularly entertaining one that I had. I was going through the security line at our local airport here, and the TSA agent was kind of asking, just making small chit chat. Hey, what do you do? Where are you going? That kind of thing. I was like going to a conference. Yeah, I'm in e-commerce and I'm going to a conference. Oh, okay. What do you sell? Fountain pens. And I'm sure you all, anytime you bring up fountain pens, I'm sure you get a variety of interactions. Sometimes that for me is magnified because not only am I into fountain pens, but I've got my whole business around it. So there's a lot of different ways that people can be curious about that. But this particular agent was, like fountain pens. And I was like, yeah, okay, you fill it with a bottle of ink and this kind of thing. And they were like, fountains? And they were literally thinking like water fountains, or which, the name originates. It's called a fountain pen because, it has a reservoir of ink inside the pen, which was novel at the time that these pens were developed. So the ink just flowed continuously out of it like a fountain, right? So like that was the original name of why they're called fountain pens. But she just like could not get past the fountain thing. So I think she was thinking like you have like a town square with a fountain in the middle of it. She was like, does a pen come up out of the middle of the fountain? Like, and I was trying to explain to her, and literally it was just like, couldn't get past a physical fountain and having a pen either coming out of it or being used in it in some fashion. And I was like going through security. I'm trying to like, am I taking my shoes off, my belt and everything? And it's like going through this whole routine. And so eventually got to the point, she's like, does it come out of the fountain? I was like, sure, yes, that's what it is. And I was like, I gotta go. So that was probably one of my more awkward interactions, which is like favorite really just from like a humor standpoint of like, wow, literally some people just don't grasp what a fountain pen is, which honestly is good because for me, that keeps me willing to explain the basics. Even 10 years into this, I'm like, really, it is a really foreign concept to some people. And if I really want to introduce them to this magical world, I got to break it down sometimes and explain that. Unless I'm literally like undressing in the security line. Normally I'd be a little more patient than that. But that was one. That actually wasn't even what I wrote down in my notes as probably my favorite reaction. That was like more of a humorous thing. I think the one that was probably my favorite, I was going to an e-commerce conference. I wonder if it was that same conference that I was going to when I traveled. I don't know that for a fact. I do travel a little bit, but that would be pretty funny if these two interactions happened on the same trip. Anyway, I digress. I literally don't remember. But I was going to this networking event. It was an e-commerce networking event. It wasn't anything exclusive to fountain pens. So it's always interesting, whatever context I go in, whether I'm going somewhere with extended family, I'm going somewhere, a local networking event, a social event, I'm pretty much like the pen guy, right? Like it's an easy thing for people to remember. They're like, oh yeah, like if I'm going to church or I'm going to any type of interaction, people are like, that's like the thing that they can remember. Goulet is kind of a distinctive name, so they're like, Goulet, oh yeah, you're the pen guy, right? They usually don't remember fountain pen specifically, but it's like, you're the pen guy. So I fully expect, especially when I'm going to like a very specific business conference thing for multiple days, I'm like, I am going to get ready to explain what fountain pens are and how the business operates in detail over and over and over again. It's kind of what that setting is for, right? So of course I go to learn more about how to run a better business and all these types of things, but I know I'm going to be explaining what fountain pens are to the vast majority of people at, even like a work conference where I can talk about shipping rates and credit card authorizations and e-commerce platforms and all these types of things. That we can engage, on different things, but like fountain pens to even, to them is going to be a whole new thing. And it's crazy because when I go, e-commerce is just such a cool landscape anyway, because it's a lot of people just really entrepreneurial things. I've literally met people that have multi-million-dollar businesses selling clown makeup, like makeup that clowns wear, e-commerce business. Other people sell certain creams for sensitive areas. Other people are selling like back and knee braces, and some people are like performance automotive parts. But I've met some really specific people. Like some people have like we're based out of Australia and we sell only mountain bike parts. We're like no bikes, just parts, aftermarket parts for mountain bike enthusiasts, and just crazy specific things. So it's kind of cool when I go to these types of environments because I'm like, yeah, like we sell fountain pens on the internet. And they're like, cool, that's equally as weird as what I sell. Like everybody's got their really specific things. So that's always really fun when I go to an e-commerce type event because everybody's into, some obscure like little corner of the internet selling their weird things. We're definitely the ones that are doing that in the fountain pen world. But there was this one particular event that I was at. It was sort of a social event. I think it was like a bowling alley, literally. It was like kind of in a downtime. We were doing the conference thing, and then we were meant to have this kind of social event. The thing that I love about being in the fountain pen business is I can keep a pen on me. And it's funny because this actually is the pen that I had with me in this interaction. My pen just happens to be right there. That's really funny. And I believe that this ink is still in. I think that this is still the ink. This event was back in February. And I think this is still the ink from that event. It's October now. I really should clean my pens more often. But anyway, I digress. So this was literally the pen. It's TWSBI 580 ALR in the nickel gray. And I have inked up with it Monteverde DC Super Show Blue. Just had that combo in it, happened to have it in there, and that's fine. But yeah, I when I'm at these networking events, it's great because, you always get that moment, and you all get this too, I'm sure. You're like, okay, I'm into fountain pens, and people are like, fountain pen, and you can tell they're like, that sounds familiar, but I can't quite place what a fountain pen is. So for me, it's like clockwork. It's like, I sell fountain pens. It's like the type of pen that you fill with a bottle of ink. Oh, look at one. I have one right here. Here it is. Look, see, this one's clear so you can see all the parts. That's called a demonstrator. Here it is. See, look, this is the nib and this is... So like, I'm gotten really good at going to these types of events and parlaying, okay, this is a business, here it is, this is my business is structured, and and this is a fountain pen, and look, this is how it flows, and yet, look at the ink sloshes back and forth, and you fill it from a bottle, and it's about this price, and here's a and you fill it, and here's off, and you clean it, and look, when you write with it, oh, there's different tip size, I can really just I'm like a pro at these things at this point after 10 years. Not even as much so as like I don't even have a physical store. If I had a physical brick and mortar store, I mean, you would be saying the same deal 100 times a day. So those people are for sure good, or people doing pen shows and stuff, they're really good. Props to all my other fellow retailers out there. You're right there with, and so I just explain it in videos and stuff. I'm not really going through the whole spiel every single time. So when I do it, I'm really excited and enthusiastic about doing it, especially when I'm in an environment where everybody's socializing and bowling and having fun. So what happened is I pulled out this pen and I start going through this deal, and with one or two people, and I'm going through it, and the one individual who initially asked me about it is super engaged and interested and fascinated. And so whenever I run into somebody that's really fascinated, I am full into that teaching mode. Just imagine the energy that you feel coming across in a video like this. And here we're an hour and 5 minutes into this video, and I'm still super pumped up about this. You can just imagine what it's like in person at an event. And I'm a tall guy too, so I really come across when I get excited and I gesticulate a lot. Clearly, I'm moving my hands a lot, so I really I start to stir up a scene when I really get into pens. So I literally start drawing a crowd. I felt like I was Billy Mays, as here, look, and here's how to order, that kind of deal. And so I was going on like this, and they were like, oh my gosh, that's so fascinating. Oh, well, what about and they saw my handwriting, and they're like, oh, that's really good handwriting. And so I got into the history of, the typewriter, and how, Palmer invented cursive to compete with the typewriter, and it was the smartphone of the day, and it was threatening handwriting, So I go into the history and the whole everything, and it's just they're fascinated by the whole world, the whole deal, the pen, the whole thing. And I'm not joking, I went on for 45 minutes, and I had a small crowd of these other business owners just completely just enthralled and fascinated with my little spiel about not the fountain pen community and how fountain pens work, the history behind it, the cultural aspects of the different manufacturers, and the whole thing. It was just it super made me appreciate, and this is why it's one of my favorite interactions. Super validated me just as a business owner of other people and who are running other businesses. Some of them are very successful financially, but they're man, the engagement that you have with your community, they're I would kill for that. I would kill to have customers that love the product so much, and they talk about it and share it, and they gather up in person and They're so, other people that are selling, very utilitarian products, they just don't have engaged communities like we have in the pen world. So me, it's super rewarding to get to talk and kind of represent the pen community in those settings. But then it also just made me deeply, deeply appreciate just all that there is in the fountain pen community, the history behind it, the technology that was used to develop these, the legacy, the companies that we represent, you as the community, it's just every time I go through that whole deal, I just fall in love with it all over again. It's just really cool. So that was a great experience, and that'll stick with me for quite a long time. So that was my most memorable, probably my favorite reaction that I got from non-fountain pen users. There you go. My question of the week for this week as we close this out, what pen or maybe ink, paper, what's something related to your fountain pen experience has really completely surprised you for the better? Maybe it was an individual pen that you got, you were like, oh, okay, I'll get it. Or maybe it was a gift or something, and it just maybe you were like, okay, I've heard this is good, but I have my doubts, and then you try it and you're like, whoa, I get the hype or something. I don't know, just curious if you've had any experience like that. Go ahead and share. Just maybe a little context, what product it was that really blew you away, maybe why, and just circumstances around it if you want to get into any detail. I just think that'd be really cool to hear about that. So there you go. You can learn about a lot of what I talked about here on gouletpens.com. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe to that. If you're watching this on Fountain Pen Day, yay for your dedication. I hope you have had a wonderful Fountain Pen Day. Thank you for being involved in the community. I'm super grateful to be doing these videos, continuing to do these videos. 272 is now in the books. Thank you so much for watching, and right on.